Welcome to the Seahawks Squad Show. I'm Anderson Hurst, and we'll be going over both the Rams loss a little bit and looking ahead to the Tennessee Titans. What is considered a success? We'll find out.
And it's your boy Turbo Robert Turbin. And speaking of looking ahead, look, I can't wait for Turkey Day, but the Grinch is coming for Christmas.
Ooh.
And I'm Corbin Smith. Gray Zabel is going to play on Sunday. I'm already calling it right now.
Oh, I love that. Love to hear that.
Hey, 12, it's the Seahawks Squad. Everything Seattle Seahawks every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Emerald City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get loud, 12s. The Seahawks Squad Show starts now.
What up, 12s? Welcome to the Seahawks Squad Show. I'm Anderson Hurst. I apologize for the makeshift background here as we are in the process at the Hurst household of converting what was my office into the baby's room, as that is on the way. And, we all know which take precedent and all of that stuff.
That's where you got to do a combo, man. You got the baby's got to learn about podcasting at a young age.
Nope. I'm telling you, it didn't work. My office used to be upstairs in a nice room until my son said, it's time for me to have it now. So now I'm in this sort of makeshift office. So I'm with you, Anders. I've been there.
Let me put it this way. It wasn't necessarily 100% my choice when it comes to that. So, but, you gotta how it goes.
You gotta do, man.
Do what you got to do. Exactly. I'm excited for my little baby boy to be coming here pretty soon. But this episode of the Seahawks Squad Show is brought to you by Crossover Thursday PrizePicks. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get your $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. All right, so we'll do kind of I think it's perfect for Crossover Thursday because it's kind of crossing over from week 11 and the Rams to week 12 against the Titans. We'll be kind of doing a little bit of both today. I think a little bit closer to right after the game, we did a lot of Rams reaction, closer to the game time of the week 12 game against the Titans. You'll be seeing a lot of preview for that. We'll do a little bit of both of those today. So I want to get Corbin's thoughts initially, right? Because I didn't get to talk to him right after the game, after the Rams loss on Sunday. So, and the Turbo too, I know I chatted with you right after the game, but just initially after kind of digesting this one, after watching film, do you feel any differently about the loss to the Rams now than you did at 4:00 on Sunday afternoon? Turbo, I'll start with you.
I don't know if I feel any differently in terms of the Seahawks still needing that, I guess, that win against a premier team in the NFL, needing to do that and do that consistently, right? To sort of put them in the category as an elite football team. But what I will say is everybody's entitled to a bad game, man. It happens. It happens. That doesn't categorize you as, that type of player. Doesn't categorize you as the type of player that you expect those type of things to happen at some point in the season. It's just a bad game, and it happens to us all. So I feel good about, moving forward in the outlook for the Seahawks.
All right, Corbin, I'm going to kind of double up on this one because I didn't talk to you right after the game. So how do you feel? And then do you feel any differently now after kind of breaking stuff down, kind of taking a step back from just the initial reaction right after the game on Sunday?
I'm a big subscriber, Anders, to the idea it's never as good as you think and it's never as bad as you think.
Okay.
This was a very rare game, though, after going back and watching the All-22 3 or 4 times. I felt the same way after every single one of those watches that I did when the game ended. And the way I felt was Seattle. I know some other people have said that. I thought Seattle was the better team on Sunday. And this is the take that I have that maybe some are going to disagree with. The interceptions obviously were big, and the Rams got a couple scores off those. But I think the red zone issues were the reason they lost this game, not the turnovers, because one of those interceptions, they quickly got their own turnover after, and another one of them they got to stop. So The fact they had 3 other times in the red zone they could not get a touchdown, that to me was what was ultimately the difference in this game. And it's weird because if you would have told me going in Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions, I'm thinking, oh man, the Rams just absolutely murdered them in this game. And that didn't happen because the defense played arguably their best game of the entire season. I mean, 2 of the 3 touchdowns they gave up, they were backed up against their own goalposts. Like, it's impossible to win in those situations. But they held Matthew Stafford to 130 passing yards. That looked like a typo when you look at it. But really, after the first quarter, the Rams couldn't do anything on offense other than that one short field they got off one of the interceptions. And that is a credit to the fact the Seahawks were just playing stifling coverage on the outside, and they were making it really difficult on the receivers to get open.
Yeah. Corbin, I'm going to kind of follow up with you on that. And you mentioned the red zone. I tend to agree with you. I think if you're looking at one thing, and obviously interceptions, turnovers, is what's going to happen. But if you're I think they were 0 for 4 in the red zone.
1 for 4. They were 1 for 4.
They did. Okay. They did get that one. Okay. But you look at the 2 philosophies between Sean McVay and Mike McDonald, and I asked Turbo and Chris this and Rob after the game on Sunday, and I'm curious on your thoughts. Do you think there needs to be a little bit more aggression to go forward at least one of those times to get a touchdown to help you guys out a little bit? It just seems like Sean McVay went for it a couple times. He got I think 2 of 4 from his 4 times that he was in the red zone. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but you could tell a difference in philosophy. Mike McDonald was there to just get his points, and Sean McVay wanted touchdowns.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it was that simple because I'd have to go back and look at the yards to go, but I don't feel like any of those they were within 4 or 5 yards. Okay. So I agree with, I think McDonald was the one the other day that said that the early downs in those red zone situations, they just weren't good enough. They put themselves too far behind the sticks, which against a defense like the Rams, you just can't do. Yeah. And it kind of closed down their playbook. It took away some of those runs they like to do on 3rd 2, 3rd and 3 situations. They didn't have those kind of snaps. So now there was a time that I think they had 4th and 1, and they had already been stopped on the barnyard push. But yeah. I would have probably gone back to that at that point. That was a spot where I'm like, look, you need to get something going to spark your offense a little bit. But I think the red zone, they probably made all the right decisions because going for it on 4th and 5, unless it's an end of game situation, the stats are going to tell you that you don't have a great chance of converting on that.
Yeah, I got talked off the ledge a little bit on that as well. I just came out of that was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a analytics guy that likes to see a little bit more aggression from my head coach and everything. But I think almost everyone has told me, it's not necessarily that simple. And it's more of a calculated aggression in those instances. Turbo, what do you think in terms of, I don't want to think, a lot of people have pointed out some issues with the pass blocking. And we'll kind of marry that with the Sam Darnold discussion in the next segment. But I'm curious, I know we asked you about the running game and Ken Walker versus Zach Charbonnet. How does the run blocking look for you at this point in the year? It seems like it's improving little by little each week to me, but that's just my novice eye take on things.
No, it is. Your novice eye is correct. It is improving, and it certainly has improved in terms of when you look at, recent years past, as well. And so they've really been intentional about correcting some of those issues in the run game, particularly the point of attack up front. And I do think that it's better. I think not having Sundell is a big time thing. Just because I just think he brings an element of physicality there. But I think that the Seahawks will be do a good job making up for that. The thing about the Tennessee Titans, and I know we'll get to it, is that, I think the defensive line is one of their strengths. Even though they're not a good football team, that's actually probably one of their strongest suits in terms of a team. But the run game overall, point of attack, can it get better? Absolutely. I think there still needs to be a little bit of improvement, especially at the guard spot. Okay. But overall, it has gotten better.
Corbin, I didn't get your thoughts again. We didn't talk to you right after the game, but I know everyone points to Sam Darnold, how he played, interceptions, all that. Running game, how do you feel about it at this point in the year?
I thought this was one of their best games in terms of the way the blocking looked. And And it's another reason I'm really excited that Gray Zabel's injury ended up not being a significant one, because just one play that jumped out to me, it was the 25-yard run that Ken Walker III had in the first half, which, by the way, the Rams had not given up a run of more than 20 yards the entire season. And Seattle got that 25-yarder. You got to see why Gray Zabel was a first-round pick on that play. The ability to reach, block, and not only stay with it, but end up sealing the defender back in when they got outside of the numbers. Yeah. There are very few guards in the NFL that are going to be able to do that and not get called for a holding penalty. And that's the athleticism, that's the physicality on that play. I felt like Abraham Lucas had a really good game in this one. I thought Anthony Bradford had some really good reps in this game too. And I know people have been critical of him, but generally speaking, look, I've seen some people say that the offensive line, we'll talk more about this, but they've blamed the offensive line for some of Sam Darnold's issues in this game. Maybe there was a little more pressure than there had been, but I still felt like the line played perfectly fine across the board in this game. Certainly good enough to win that one.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of been the general take, especially looking at the film. And I know you guys, you've probably seen the clips of Anthony Bradford, and there's some not good reps in there, but there are some good ones too that won't get necessarily talked about. It's not a strength, that position for the Seahawks right now, but I think it gets a little overblown sometimes in terms of, how much effect it really has on the team. Corbin, I see you shaking your head there.
Yeah, look, your offensive line is better. The weakest link is still going to be the guy that gets pointed out. That's always how it goes. So I think he's played better the last couple games. Are there still areas to shore up? Yeah. Absolutely. But that tells you how far the O-line has come, I think, too.
Yeah, could totally agree. Turbo, just before we get into Sam Darnold, how do you feel like Clint Kubiak has handled the last couple of weeks? Or especially, let's take a look at the LA game, because I think there was a little bit of thought, especially on that last drive, that he wasn't getting the play call quick enough. I know on our radio show earlier this week, the take was that there wasn't a sense of urgency in that last drive when they needed those last couple yards. It just seemed like they were wasting a ton of time. And I think immediately the blame goes to the OC / the quarterback. So I'm just curious, how those kind of conversations look. How does the play calling in general and the operations of the offense look to you?
Well, clock management typically is on the head coach. So, you got to go throw Coach McDonald in that conversation as well. But, sometimes, look, it's tough for an offensive coordinator. And I think Corbin can speak to this too, when, the game isn't quite going your way. The rhythm is a little bit off. You're turning the football over. And so now, as a play caller, you're human too, man. So you start to second guess yourself as well. It's like Sam Darnold out there as a running back. It happens to us, man. We see a crease. Yeah. Ken Walker does it all the time. He second guesses himself. And then he ends up bouncing it outside or whatever. And it's like, man, you had it. You just had to trust your eyes. Same thing at quarterback. Man, there's the throw. You just got to trust it. And sometimes for a play call, it's like, man, here's the call. No. Yeah. I want to do this instead. And instead of just going with the first instinct. And it just happens. And then you get to the fourth quarter and it's critical moments. And it's just like, man, you're just out of rhythm. You're out of rhythm as a player. But you can get out of rhythm a little bit as a play call, and I think we saw a little bit of that with Coach Kubiak. But that's not a knock on him.
Right.
My point is that, it just happens, and I think he'll be better moving forward from it.
Yep. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and then I want to talk about Sam Darnold, because I want to wrap this one up with the idea of looking forward. I know we talked a little bit about that in our post-game reaction. I want to kind of have that same viewpoint that we just did of, after looking at the film, how much better do you feel about it now, or worse, whichever way? And then looking forward to the rest of the season. Does he have a big game problem? Does he have a certain type of defense that kind of gives him a little bit too much trouble? So I'm curious on what you guys think on Sam Darnold looking ahead of the rest of the season. Or is this just one bad game? Is this just one bad game and you can kind of, put it behind you a little bit. So we'll take a look at that next here on the Seahawks Squad Show, reacting to the Rams loss. And then later in the show, we'll look ahead to the Titans game here in week number 12. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Corbin Smith with you. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way just to play. Pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and then you can play anywhere. PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is awesome because maybe you like to get in on the action a little bit, but you don't know exactly which bets you want to make or anything like that. It's as simple as it gets. You pick more or less on player stats, and you can put a lineup together and win cash prizes based off it. It's pretty dang simple. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. That's obviously an example with Steph Curry there. But if one of your players leaves early with injury, the injury reboot saves the lineup from a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Corbin Smith, and Robert Turbin with me. Let me switch you guys back up there. It's a visual cue thing with me. I need to make sure we're in the same spot as last time. But all right, let's talk about Sam Darnold here. I think everyone's going to look at a 4-interception day against one of your division rivals and a good team, and they're going to have emotional reactions. And I think that there wasn't any shortage of those right after the game on Sunday. But after the kind of looking at the film, do you feel better or worse about Sam Darnold? I'm just that one performance. I'm just saying, do you feel better about it, or is there maybe something where there was just a miscommunication on a couple of his throws, or do you see like, oh man, that's worse than I expected it to be, or I remember it being when I watched it on Sunday? Turbo.
I mean, I feel the same, Anders.
Okay.
I do.
Turbo sticks to his guns, guys. He doesn't feel any different ever.
Well, I mean, listen, I just think, I think he's good.
Yeah.
And some folks may even categorize him as a great player. I don't know if I would categorize him as that yet. I know he's got great stats and he's done great things. He did great things with the Minnesota Vikings last season, and he's done, some great things for the Seahawks this year from a numbers standpoint. But I think that takes a little bit of time before being categorized in that space. Some folks are able to recognize it right away, like a Jaden Daniels, or somebody like that. Maybe that's a good example, maybe not. But I feel the same in terms of I think he's a good quarterback, and I think that there's room for him to get better and grow, and so I think that's the trajectory that he's on. So I don't think this game, because of the turnovers and things of that nature, has thrown that off, if that makes sense. So this is a guy, to me, who is still on an upward trajectory in his career, and that's how I feel.
All right, Corbin, do you feel better or worse about Sam Darnold's performance against LA after watching the film?
When you hear my analysis on it, you might find my answer to this a little bit mystifying, but I'm going to say better. And here, let me explain why. And I had a little bit of a chance to talk about this on Locked On Seahawks earlier this week, but what I love about this show is we can dive a little deeper into things.
Yep.
But look, all 4 of these interceptions I'm putting on the QB. Like, there are times where receivers make, run poor routes, so there might be times you get absolutely blasted and then you just don't see things clearly and you get picked. Like, those things happen. It's the NFL, it's football. But I feel better because I look at the mistakes that were made And I feel like Sam Darnold has already proven that he can learn from those mistakes and he can rebound from those. And going to what Turbo said from an ascending trajectory standpoint, I think he's still, you're still trying to learn. You're trying to learn Rashid Shaheed. You're still trying to get used to him as your new weapon. You're still, midway through the season here, you're still trying to learn all the intricacies of what Clint Kubiak's went around. Kubiak's trying to figure out what works with all his quarterback's tools. So, I look at the mistakes that were made, and they're ones that I think are definitely correctable. Sometimes you get in a position where, look, I hate to pick on Charlie Whitehurst, but that's going to be the example that I'm going to use here. When Charlie Whitehurst on the Seahawks, there were interceptions that he made that you're just like, look, I can't watch this and think that things are going to get better. It's just over and over, same thing happening. This felt like it was kind of an avalanche type of game for Sam Darnold, where there just were some things that happened that all just, just you have bad games where things happen. And look, he didn't see Cameron Kinchins on the first interception in cover one robber. That is a look that QBs have to be able to read, but you got to give Kinchins credit too, because the way they had it looking, it was hard to tell pre-snap that was going to be robber. It looked almost like a 2-deep shell. And they did a really good job of selling that. And since the Seahawks didn't have any other crossers to occupy him, he did what smart football players do. I'm going to go make a play and undercut that throw. And I just don't think Sam Darnold expected he was going to be there. The second pick that Kinchins had, you can argue Arroyo didn't run that route tight enough and that Darnold was thinking, well, he's going to run in front of the safety, but that was still a really risky throw. I felt like he was big play hunting a little bit too much in this game with what the Rams were giving him schematically. The last interception might have been the one that drove me the most insane, just because I know Mike McDonald said it might knock us out of field goal range. That was still a mid 50-yarder if he sacked there. That's a much easier kick than 61 yards. We might be talking about a Seahawks win if he would have just ate that one. And I think Sam, he's talked about, he knows that he's got to, there are times where taking a sack is okay. And I think that play would definitely be an example of that. The one that was on the comeback route, the more I've watched that, I don't think he should have made that throw, but at the same time he got hit. And Kobe Durant they were playing quarters, and he just basically was playing the sticks. And sometimes you just got to tip your helmet to the other team too. So yeah, there were a bunch of mistakes there, but I love the way he ended the game and the way he was getting the ball out quick, and he just bounced back and almost led the team to a win. So I actually feel better about it after watching all these interceptions multiple times.
All right, how dare you insult clipboard Jesus like that? I mean, come on. No, I think I'm with you.
Just watch the Giants game in 2011 or the Browns game. I actually was in attendance for that one. That still might be the worst NFL game I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean, the Cleveland Browns versus Charlie Whitehurst and the Seahawks. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so what is it with the Rams? Because it feels like, is it a mental thing with him now where it's just like, oh my God, I'm playing the Rams. I have to prove people that this isn't a thing. And he starts pressing a little bit. Is it a certain look that they give defensively? Turbo, what do you see? Is there something with this team? Because he struggled with this team last year, even with the Vikings in a different situation as well. So I don't know what it is about, this certain look that they give him, or maybe they just have his number. I don't know.
The Rams are a good football team. There's a reason why people are talking about Matthew Stafford being an MVP and the Rams being one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why they gave the Eagles a lot of trouble in the playoffs, last season, right? That's really the only team the Eagles really struggled with,
Well coached.
Okay. It's a good football team, man. I don't think it has anything to do with Sam Darnold specifically. I just think the Rams, they give a lot of people trouble when they play certain teams. And so you have to give credit where credit is due. Just like Corbin said, you got to. I like the fact that he used helmet instead of hat. You got to tip your helmet, even though it's hard to tip. It's heavy.
I don't know. Sam's had issues with balls tipping off helmets this year.
That's true.
So the Rams are good. But you did mention something earlier that, I think might be worth talking about in terms of, is it a big game problem? Yeah. I think that remains to be seen. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that what I will say is those type of issues do happen with players. It's not like this fictional thing that has been made up. Like
Right.
there are players, coaches even, that when it's on the line, something's altered. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's a mental thing, whatever. But something is altered where they just cannot consistently get over the hump and get it done. So yeah. I'm not ready to say that about Sam Darnold because it's only been a small sample size. The guy, I mean, he had an incredible season last year, eliminated for that happens all the time. Yeah. Really, you know. So with more, we'll learn that. But right now, I'm not ready to say that.
Well, and before Corbin, I want you to jump in here. I want to make a distinction that there's a difference between big games and playing against good teams. A lot of times there's a lot of crossover on that. But Sam Darnold has beaten good teams, including the Seahawks last year.
You just jumped right into what I was going to say. Like,
okay.
I absolutely despise the narrative that Sam Darnold cannot win big games. And I'm going to tell you why right now. Let's just look at the end of the season last year for the Minnesota Vikings. I know they lost those 2 games against the Rams, but Green Bay, week 17, goes out, throws for 377 yards, 3 touchdowns. They beat the Packers. Seahawks game the week before, 3 touchdowns, 246 yards, and that was at Seattle. The Seahawks were fighting for their playoff lives. Atlanta was still playing really good football in week 14, and he threw for 347 and 5 touchdowns in that game. I think it is a Rams problem, and it isn't even necessarily that he can't play well or that there's a mental block. The Rams, you got to give them credit for the disguised coverages. Like, they do it as well as anybody in the NFL. They really do. I mentioned that robber play. Yeah. You know, the quarters play was pretty easy for me to diagnose looking at the all 22, but it's a little different when you're on the field. But they do such a good job with 3 safeties, a lot like Mike McDonald does, some different scheming, and they do it out of dime packages. They play like 60% dime, which is almost unheard of, and they're just so successful at it. And with all those DBs out there, they do a lot of mixing and matching, moving guys around, selling one look, and then doing something else. So I just think Sam's just got to be sharper with picking that stuff up, and I think more film study. This is a case where I think the mental part of the game is what is setting him back against Chris Shula. And I think when they play again later this year, that he and Clint Kubiak are to be better prepared for that. All
right. Turbo, do you have a response to that?
No, I think Corbin, I think he's accurate with most of it. It's a Rams problem. You know, I think maybe we're not exactly aligned, but the Rams are a good football team, like I mentioned. And there are a lot of quarterbacks, there are a lot of teams who struggle against them because of how good they are on both sides of the football. And so we'll see. You know, the only thing that I'll say is, look, I know the Seahawks, won 10 games last year, barely missed the playoffs. You know, the Packers, I believe, were a playoff team, you know, last season.
Yep.
You know, sometimes bad teams make the playoffs. I'm not saying both of those teams were bad teams.
Those are still really good wins in the heat of the playoffs, though, Turbo. Or heat of the playoffs.
No doubt. I mean, heat of the playoff race. It's just, you know, the elite teams is different than good teams.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's where the small discrepancy is for me.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to I think there's sometimes some subjectivity to that too. Like what qualifies as an elite team versus a great team or a good team at the end of the season. Sometimes the wins don't necessarily paint the picture with that either, because you have strength of schedule, opponents, all that different stuff that goes into it.
And of course, the big context is that, you know, sometimes you lose games that you play really well in. Tampa Bay this year, right? For Sam Darnold. So sometimes wins are not a quarterback stat. Sometimes it ends up being that way, but I know everyone looks at that and they're just like, oh, quarterback can't win the big game.
Let's put Drew Lock in. I don't know how many people I've seen say that this week.
Oh, really?
I have seen a lot of people say that this week.
Really? Wow.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's like you go from MVP talk to, oh, he had a really bad game. we need to put in Drew Lock or Jalen Milroe. And it's like, no.
I know I'm not head over heels for the guy, but come on. That's taking it too far.
Yeah.
Way too far.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this one last thing while we're talking about Sam Darnold before we move on, is that I think you could tell, and I've been a huge fan of Sam Darnold all year long, but I think you could tell the difference in those two quarterbacks that he played against on Sunday. And it wasn't even that Matthew Stafford, torched the Seahawks defense or anything like that, but he took what was given to him, didn't make mistakes, and just, when it wasn't there, threw it at his receiver's feet, or he took a sack or whatever. Like you guys were saying, sometimes you just got to kind of do that. I feel like if Sam Darnold has a just average game, the Seahawks are probably winning this one by a score. So I just feel like, that is where I think he needs to improve the most. And Chris Crawford always talks about ceiling and floor all the time, right? You saw his floor, what happens when things go bad for him on Sunday. If you can raise that floor to be like, all right, what's the worst case scenario for you? And if that's better than what we saw on Sunday against the Rams, I feel like that's a massive improvement. Sometimes everyone gets just so excited with how good they look when they're really good, right? But if you can raise the stakes a little bit for when things aren't going well, look like Matthew Stafford did on Sunday, I think that's going to be a huge step in Sam Darnold's development. All right. Let's move on a little bit to the Titans. I want to ask you guys, it's a 1-9 football team. All right. Cam Ward, rookie, first overall pick. They might get the first overall pick again for the second straight year. So, is there any concern for a letdown game after a loss? Is there any sort of area where the Seahawks may be vulnerable a little bit compared to where the Titans are? I want to ask you guys about that. And then our last segment, kind of leading into that last segment, we'll talk about what would look like a success for the Seattle Seahawks. Is that just getting the win? Hey, you just got to win every week or win as often as you can in this league. Do you need to see a specific thing with a specific player or aspect of the game or anything like that? Do you need to blow them out? We'll talk about what constitutes a success for you guys here a little bit later on in the show. We'll be right back. We'll talk about some Titans matchup here coming up next on the Seahawks Squad Show. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when the first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Corbin Smith with you today. We just talked about the Rams loss. I'm going to put that one in the rearview mirror now. We're looking ahead to Week 12 against the Tennessee Titans, 1-9. There's not a lot of areas when you look at the stats that the Titans really have any sort of positivity going. But these guys are here to tell me an area that they are most concerned in, or if there's any that the Seahawks should be looking at where the Titans can cause some trouble. Do you have any concern for a trap game here, Turbo?
No, I don't. Not for a trap game. Not at all. Not at all. Especially coming off a loss, especially coming off a day where, you turn the football over and, the Seahawks are going to be very intentional about, making up for the mistakes and they're going to be locked in. I don't think this is a trap game at all, for the Seahawks. This is a must win though, just to get back on their feet, and obviously you're playing a team that's 1-9. You lose this game and it's kind of hard to take the Seahawks seriously moving forward, and so therefore they know that this is the NFL, man. You can get got on any given Sunday. That is the reality. So you got to come in locked in. What the Titans do well, defense. I'll start there. I just think it's their defensive line. And so if there is any pressure point for the Seahawks in this ball game, it's that, being able to protect Sam Darnold. That's one thing that the Titans have been able to do pretty good this season, is find ways to put pressure on the quarterback. I think their defensive line is pretty strong, probably the strength of their football team. On the offensive side of the ball, you look at Tajay Spears, and their run game, Tony Pollard. It's not consistent, but it's probably the strength of their offense. If those two guys can catch a rhythm, they're both pretty good. They're pretty decent. Okay, obviously their passing game hasn't been strong, and their pass protection hasn't been strong either in terms of Cam Ward. They got a long way to go. But those are the two areas when I look at the Titans and say, okay, what do they do well? I think they rush the passer rare with their front four. Okay. And I think they have a decent run game when it's able to catch a rhythm early.
Corbin, first, do you have any sort of fear of a trap game? And then what area scares you about the Titans at all?
No, I don't think Mike Macdonald's going to allow that to happen. And if you've been watching his press conferences this week, there's been a little bit more edge to Mike Macdonald. I think he's coming out of that Monday game. Like it initially was like, we only lost by 2. I think then it starts to settle. We lost by 2 and we should have won that game. And so I think this week, as Turbo said, the intentionality of it, I think that behind closed doors, they got rid of the ACT practice that they had on Wednesdays the last couple of weeks. Like, okay, it's playoff time. It is time to get out there and get the work done on the field. We need to ramp things up. I'm expecting them to come out pissed off, quite frankly. Okay. That's what I'm expecting this game. Now, I don't think it's going to be a trap game. I think the Tennessee Titans have a couple things that could keep them in this game. And I agree with Turbo on one of them. And here's the thing that's interesting about Tennessee. They traded Draymond Jones to Baltimore at the deadline. So their edge, off the edge, they're depleted there. They have had issues depth-wise off the edge. But you can make an argument they have a top 3, top 4 defensive tackle tandem in the AFC that's just being squandered because of the other issues they have. But Jeffrey Simmons is still an absolute man. He's an absolute stud. He is one of those guys, you get to see it last week against the Texans, rushing in a 2-point stance out wide 9 and got a sack at 312 pounds. Like, he is a freak. And T'Vondre Sweat is 366 pounds, and he can move. He can rush the passer. He's got 2 sacks. He's got 4 tackles for loss in just 5 games this year. That is what worries me about Tennessee. And they also have Sebastian Joseph Day, who can play some inside too. They've got some dudes inside. And so that's the reason I just wrote an article in Emerald City Spectrum about this. Like there's going to be a decision that has to be made with Gray Zabel, because I think in a lot of cases when you're playing a 1-9 team, if you have hesitancy at all about his knee, you're saying, I'm not going to put him out there. But against this opponent, even though they're 1-9, I already am missing my starting center. I don't know how I'm feeling about having 2 backups in to have to deal with Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat and the rest of that defensive line. So that is the biggest worry that I have. And I'm going to throw another position group out there. Calvin Ridley being out for the year now even further makes this a potential area of concern, in my opinion, because Tennessee is going to be force-feeding their tight ends. Okonkwo's having a good year. Yeah. Gunnar Helm, their rookie out of Texas, has got a couple touchdowns. Those guys have basically become their go-to receivers because they're playing practice squad guys now at the wide receiver position. So I don't know that that's a huge concern, but if they're going to move the ball some, I think the running game and getting the football to their secondary receivers, the running backs and the tight ends, that's going to be where they find success, especially if it comes off of extended plays with Cam Ward's legs.
And that's exactly where I'm going to jump off, because I'm not saying that he's lit it up at all, but sometimes those mobile quarterbacks, especially with very disciplined, sound defenses like the ones that the one that Seattle has here with Mike Macdonald, those are the ones that just like, all right, you can't even plan for that right now, right? So that's going to be something that I'm watching, how they deal with that. And he was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. I don't think it's the best number 1 overall pick in the last few years for sure, but the dude is a talent. I'll put it that way. And even with a poor and injured team around him and a 1-9 start, he's still going to show out. He's still wanting to kind of prove that he was the guy his rookie year. So I'm watching Cam Ward a little bit to see how he is going to be bottled up by this Seahawks defense. And I don't know. It's one of those things, Corbin, as you described that with Mike Macdonald and his press conferences, It reminded me a lot of right after the Tampa Bay game, right? He seemed pissed off after that game. And right after that were the best Seahawks games of the year. You got
kind
the
of
Jaguars.
spit nails with his words. Like it's kind of the way more felt it yesterday. Monday seemed more like, oh, I'm still kind of, it was a loss, but we played tough, whatever. By Wednesday, it's like, shit, we lost,
Yeah.
That's
like, it's almost like if we were going to ask him on the Seahawks squad show, hey, do you feel better after watching the film or worse? He would be like, God dang it, we should have won that game. He would have had a different reaction than right after the game, just for the raw reaction. But right after that Buccaneers loss, Jaguars, Seahawks dominated. Texans at home, Seahawks dominated. Commanders on the road, Seahawks dominated. Cardinals at home, Seahawks dominated. 4 straight absolute dominant games from the Seahawks. And then, of course, the Rams game last week kind of stopped that streak. But I expect them to come out hard in this game. And I think it's going to be, quite frankly, a big blowout. A game where Sam Darnold's going to come out and really try to prove that what you saw last week is not who he is. Maybe that's going to be for bad if he starts to press and make some mistakes. But I think mostly it's going to be in a good way. He's going to make some plays. He's going to want to put up 35-plus points on this Titans defense. So I see a very big number on the offensive side going, and I see a similar game script that we saw in that kind of 3-week stretch right after the Buccaneers loss as well. So, okay, so that kind of leads to our next question. What would be a success for this game? Is it just winning the game? It's all, you just keep winning every single week that you can. That sometimes that's all you need to do in the National Football League. Is it a specific area that you need to see? Do you need to see Sam Darnold not turn the ball over? Do you need to see Ken Walker get 100 yards? Do you need to see no sacks? Whatever. However that looks. Maybe it's a defensive thing as well. Or is it you need to win by a certain amount of points? You got to blow this team out. They're bad. They're 1-9. Go prove your dominance. Let's go. We'll talk about that with our experts here on the Seahawks Squad Show. And then we'll get a little bit of game prediction sort of thing. Not full on score, but how you expect the game to play out, kind of like I just did there with the game script. All right, we'll be right back. Seahawks Squad Show. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Corbin Smith with you. All right, so we kind of broke down the area that we would be most concerned. It's all relative, guys. Maybe we're not actually incredibly concerned about that area, but you have to pick something to be concerned about. They have a good defensive line. I'm looking at Cam Ward, not necessarily that I'm expecting him to go off, but that's an area where you never know what can happen. But what would be a success for you guys in this game? It can be as specific or as general as you want. Turbo, what does that look like to you? What is the success in Week 12 against the Titans?
Well, obviously, I'll start on defense. I think one of the things I'd like to see from Seattle is a couple takeaways from the secondary. We talked about how, Corbin, spoke about how they're depleted at wide receiver. And, listen, as good as Cam Ward has been, their protection hasn't been great. And, he's turned the ball over quite a bit, this season. And I think there's an opportunity for the Seahawks to get their hands on the football. So, I'd like to see a couple takeaways from our secondary. I think that's something that they can obviously execute on and then build off of that moving forward. On offense, two things really. Protecting the football, obviously. The game's not going to be perfect. They got good players. They're going to get sacks. They're going to make their plays. But you like to see, okay, can we keep the ball out of harm's way? All right, that's number one. And then the second thing is, after a really good game, particularly from Kenneth Walker, can we build on that success? Against the Titans. Can we have 2 games in a row where our run game has some explosives, and we're able to execute on those type of runs. Here's a piece though that I really think could be a game changer, not only in this game but going forward for the Seattle Seahawks. So when they first traded for Shaheed, I didn't really think of him as a guy that was gonna offensively, be super impactful in terms of taking the top off the defense, using his speed. Of course, he could do that. He's got those qualities. Obviously, he did it in New Orleans. But the reason why it wasn't the first thing to come to mind was because the offense has already been explosive all season long. It's just like it's already been good. My first thought was, okay, I think they're going to use him in the return game somehow. And I think that's an area for Seattle it doesn't happen a lot in today's NFL, especially on the kickoff return. But man, is there like Bills just took a kickoff return to the house. I'm watching Thursday Night Football. Those are things, though, that I think Shaheed could bring to the Seahawks, and those are plays that I think can still be had for the Seahawks moving forward in the special teams game. We haven't seen a lot of explosive special teams plays from Seattle this season. I think that's an area where against this Tennessee Titans team, maybe some things can start to open up there.
All right,
and that
Corbin.
would be a successful game for me.
All right, Corbin, what constitutes a successful game for the Seahawks against the Titans in Week 12?
First things first, I think you got to go. To me, the biggest thing that would be a sign of success, and I'm not looking for the Cardinals and Saints games to be repeated where they were up 28-0 like 10 minutes in the game. I mean, maybe that ends up happening on Sunday, but I want to see a fast start. I want to see that this team has moved on from last week and that they're not going to let the Tennessee Titans hang around, because when upsets happen this time of year, that's what happens. You let a team hang around, they gain confidence, they start making plays. The Seahawks can't let that happen, especially playing on the road. So I think that's the first thing. Obviously, I could sit here and do the cliche that don't turn the ball over. Like, that's obviously big, but you want to see Seattle get back to what they've been doing most of this season, where they've come out firing on all cylinders on offense. They get a turnover or two on defense, or they get a bunch of sacks, which this is a team you can do it against. Cam Ward's been hounded all year. So I could see that being kind of a thing where both of those fit in. But you want to get off to a fast start, and then you don't want to get so much in cruise control mode that the second half you go out there and get a bunch of sloppy mistakes like we've seen in some of the games they've gotten big leads on. Keep playing sound football and run the football and get your running backs involved in the passing game. I'm going to keep pounding for that, because Ken Walker III has the fourth highest EPA of any running back in the NFL on receptions this year, but he has 14 catches. He had 46 last year. You saw at the end of the game last week what he can do. That's how you get him extra touches. I don't think giving him 20 carries a game is a formula for success because of his durability. But I think if you can get him in space as a receiver against Tennessee's linebackers and safeties, I think this is a game that, and especially running off edge added to that, I think this is a game that you can get him going as the all-around weapon that he should be in this offense.
Yeah, you and I have been banging that drum for a long time, Corbin. Get the running backs involved on the passing game. It's frustrating when you see, like, and I realized when earlier on in the year when they were explosive and it wasn't like losing you football games, but when you see the lack of efficiency running the football, I'm not going to say effectiveness because those are two different, outcomes, right? But the lack of efficiency running the football, you still want to get your guys touches. Those guys are like really good, especially K9 in terms of getting the ball in open space and making plays. So, and like, I totally agree with you on that last drive. You could tell a couple times that Sam Darnold, just a little check down. It doesn't even have to be a design screen or anything like that. Just, I want him to look for that a little bit more, use him. And that will kind of go in hand with making less mistakes. He doesn't have to push the ball down the field every single time. Just get your check down. Let's go. Live 2nd and 7's okay. Let's get it going here. Okay, so my whole thing, I'm going to say specifically no turnovers from Sam Darnold. I need to know that he's kind of mentally just moved on from that last week. It doesn't have to be a 400-yard effort from him for me to know that. I just need to know that, play clean football. Not a ton of penalties would be great as well. I've been kind of eyeing that recently, and some good clock management, man. That last drive kind of sticks with me a little too much because it just seemed like they wasted so much time. And if you had 6 or 7 extra seconds, then you could have gotten 5 more yards and it would have made the field goal a little bit more doable for you. So sometimes that's a difference in the game. So I'm keeping an eye on those couple things. I'm not saying that is a do or die. Like, if you don't do that, then I'm going to be pissed off or anything like that. But those are the things that I'm looking at when you're as favored as you are against a 1-9 football team, and the continued dominance on the road. Because who knows if this is going to continue to last, but it seems like the Seahawks have just been so good when they leave home, whether it's a routine thing. And Corbin, I know you brought it up earlier in the year. It's kind of died down a little bit since you've been better at home recently. But if they need to start doing home games where they have to go on the bus to get there, like, I don't know what it is about going on the road. There's something about it.
Hey, have Jimmy Graham come and fly your guys to the stadium.
That would be pretty fun. That would be pretty fun. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough because on one hand, I just want to say just win the football game. Getting wins is so hard in this league that if that's what you do, then great. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, if you win and then you don't look that great and you have to kind of last second score it to move on, I'm going to not feel that great after the game. So there are ways that you need to kind of make sure that this goes the way, like, you need to prove your dominance. You're a much better football team than these guys. So, like, prove it and kind of prove that last week was kind of a fluke in how you looked. Turbo, how do you see this one playing out? Kind of a predict the future sort of thing.
Yeah, I think Seahawks win this by a couple of touchdowns. I don't think they're, we don't have to shy away from the fact that the Tennessee Titans aren't a good football team. I do expect the Seahawks to come out guns blazing, focused, locked in, and ready to play. I expect the same thing from the Titans too, but listen, they don't have the personnel to match, and that's just the facts. And so they're going on the road, etc. I can't give you a score right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if Seahawks come out win by 17 or 21 points or something like that.
All right, Corbin, how do you see this one playing out?
They should win by 20 plus points. You just never know. You never know with these trips that are, this isn't cross country necessarily, but it's still a lengthy trip to Nashville. And sometimes these games with rookie quarterbacks at this stage of the season, Cam Ward's going to have a weekend, one of these weekends. I don't think it's this weekend, but there'll be a weekend where he shows off some of that number one overall pick talent and he keeps his team in. I mean, the one win they did have, they came back and beat the Cardinals, and he's done some things. There's been some flashes. So I expect them to win comfortably. And I think they're going to come out with some urgency early in this game. And like I said earlier, that's key to me, because if you let this team hang around, you let any team that's inferior hang around, they get confidence. And when you're playing the best players in the world, that's when you can get beat. So I don't think that's going to be an issue this weekend. I'm going to say, I'll give my score prediction tomorrow, but I think they should win this one by at least 20 points. I think they're that much better than Tennessee.
All right. That's kind of how I see it going too. I think you kind of just need to, and I think this game comes at the most perfect time too, after a big loss against an NFC West opponent. Hey, let's go get right. It's a perfect team to do that against. Let's go on the road, get back to routines. Come on. Let's get this going here. I want to see, and I like to hear what Corbin's saying about the feeling of Mike Macdonald in his post-game press conferences, because I mentioned it a couple times now. He was brought in to kind of beat Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. He's 0-2 against them this year. So I need to see that he's ready to kind of take that step up as a head coach. I'm not saying he's been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but when you got those two guys in your division, you gotta be ready to go. So, and I know we won't be able to really kind of look at those matchups until later on in the season when they play the Rams again and San Francisco at the end of the year. But I want a kind of get right game from everyone, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's the head coach, offense, defense, however you want to look at it. It's a perfect time to do that. All right. Corbin, what do you got in Emerald City Spectrum this week leading up to the game, or anything else Seattle sports related?
Yeah, EmeraldCitySpectrum.com. We got a couple of really fun Seahawk articles to check out for the last few days. If you heard my impassioned plea for Ken Walker catching more passes, I've got more in-depth data behind my rationale there, and an interesting article on whether or not Grey Zabel should be playing this weekend that I just posted before our show here. And I think it's a fascinating decision to watch, because you're one hand playing a 1-9 team. Other hand, you're playing a 1-9 team that's got Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat. And I'm just wondering how much that impacts that discussion behind closed doors. And if he's a full participant tomorrow in practice, I would think that bodes really well that he say, hey, I have no significant injury. Let me play. So that's going to be interesting. I've already made my prediction on that front. I think Grey Zabel is out there on Sunday.
All right. Turbo, where are you at this weekend? Mountain West.
Yeah, I'm in Fresno, California, man. The central part of Cali. Before I get into it, though, I had a question for you guys in regards to the season. Okay, because there's a fair, I guess, I don't know. There's a lot of optimism still with the team, as there should be. Okay, but we've talked about turnovers a little bit. Seahawks lead the league in turnovers. Is that something, or is that nothing?
I like the question. Corbin, go ahead.
I'm going to go in the mid ground here. I know that there's not supposed to be. Instead of something or nothing, I'm saying it is a little bit of a thing because there have been a lot of fluky turnovers this year too. This last game was not the case, but I mean, we've had footballs flying off offensive and defensive players' helmets. We've had all kinds of weird things that have happened. So I think that there's also been some kind of fluky luck in there, but I think it's concerning, but not to the point where I'm sitting back like, oh my God, this team's got a real problem in their hands, because like they turned it over 4 times against the Texans and they still put up 27 points against a number 1 ranked defense at that time. Like most games, it hasn't mattered because like, we're still going to put a bunch of points on the board, even when we have a few turnovers. This last week, though, was the first time we didn't see that happen. You can't live and die with that approach. So that's why I'm a little concerned, but I'm not going to go like, oh, this is a massive, like, season could crumble type thing. I'm certainly not going there.
Yeah, I think it's something because there's just too much data out there that suggests winning the turnover battle wins you football games, period, end of story. But that doesn't mean that I think the Seahawks will continue to turn the football over for the rest of this season. I think the predictive side of things, like looking forward, I don't think they will lead the league in turnovers for the last 10 games or 7 games of the season. Right? Or 8 games, I guess now. But I don't think that'll be the case. And I do think that they need to turn over opponents more often as well. I'm Turbo, you said one of the things is they got to start creating turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. And I totally agree. I almost am more not concerned, but that's an area where I think there needs to be more improvement than the offensive side, because I agree with Corbin here as well. A lot of those have been fluky. It just seems like if you take out the Rams game, then it's been almost all just like random stuff.
Tipped
like,
passes, one bouncing off the quarterback's helmet and then a guy picks it up, and like there's been some weird crap this year, man. There really has.
Yeah. So I like the question though, Turbo. Getting ready because you're hosting on Sunday, huh?
That's right. Y'all better be ready. Okay.
Let's go.
Your boy Turbo is hosting the show Sunday, and I can't wait. But the day before, I am in Fresno. I've actually never called a game at Fresno State. And so I'm like a little bit excited about that. I had a couple good games as a player during my time at Utah State going up against Fresno. My mom lives in Fresno, so nice. I'm going to have some family at the game. My younger brother, my fam will be there. So I'm excited about that. They are actually going up against my alma mater, Utah State. Ooh. So I'm excited about that as well. So I'll be on the call Saturday night, CBS Sports Network.
Make sure to keep your alumni card at the back door. Don't bring it out on the mic, man.
Right down the middle. Down the middle.
I don't want any biased calls when I'm watching that game.
Anything you say that's good about Utah State, I'm going to be filing an argument.
I might have some insights for Coach Mendenhall. I've already interviewed the Fresno State coaches this week, so we'll. No, I'm just kidding. Wow. No, it'll be a fun game. And the very, very first time I called a game at Utah State, I think my feedback from the folks sitting at the top was like, you were a little biased. But I corrected that the next time I had.
You just gotta. Hey, I get it. You gotta, like, when you're a reporter, like if you're covering a team that you were rooting for when you were younger, like you gotta keep that fan card at the back door.
You gotta keep it at the door, man.
You do, yeah.
So, but I'm excited. It's gonna be a good game. So tune in if you can Saturday night.
I love it. If you want to go watch. Utah State get talked about 70%, while Fresno State get talked about 30%. Go watch that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm giving you crap. Appreciate all y'all hanging out with us.
It's more like 60%. Like I'm thinking like 60% of the time he talks about Utah State every time.
No, it's all good. Appreciate all y'all hanging out with us. Corbin and Turbo, thank you so much for participating in the squad show today. Turbo, like I said, Turbo will be hosting because I'll be out on Sunday, so he'll have your post game coverage with Chris and Rob Rang as well. Corbin, you'll be at the game, right? Did I see that correctly?
Yeah, I'll be covering from Nashville, and I'm trying to decide which colored suit I'm going to have on this game.
All right.
I thought you were going to say you're trying to decide which bar to go to in Nashville.
That too.
I don't think. Hey, now, if you can tell me a good pizza parlor, then that might be the
okay.
But
I can't help it. I don't know anything about Nashville.
Feeling the apple green suit top this week. We're almost to Christmas, not quite, but the apple green, a little bit of inverse retro 90s Seahawks.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Now you just got to find out a tie that matches that. So,
yeah, I got a royal blue one staring me right in the eye. So
perfect. All right. Well, yeah. Turbo will have your coverage here on Seahawks Squad Show right after the game. Corbin will have boots on the ground coverage with Locked On Seahawks and Emerald City Spectrum. We got you covered all day, all night. Everything Seahawks here on Locked On Seahawks. Appreciate it all y'all. Have a good one. Go Hawks. We'll talk after the game.